Hi, I'm Nick from the AANA. Welcome. Our special guest today is Rachel Alerm from Lion. She's the Marketing Director for Lion Australia and has only recently arrived on our shores.
That's true.
My first question is, how are you liking living in Australia?
Oh, we love it. Look, it's been a big transition for us. And when I say we, it's myself and my two girls, so a 10-year-old and a 9-year-old. Arrived in April last year. We are definitely becoming more Australian by the day.
Love that.
We are getting into it. We're trying every single activity that we possibly can, but so far we're loving it.
Great, well welcome.
Thank you.
I'd love to hear a little bit about your career. So you've been with Lion for the last five and a half years, but mostly in NZ.
Yes.
I'd love to hear a little bit about a career highlight, maybe some of the differences between NZ and Australia.
Sure. So prior to Lion, I worked in FMCG in New Zealand. Before that, I kind of was working around the world on different brands. Most recently, I've been in the alcohol business with Lion New Zealand. I headed up the marketing team at Lion, and more recently the marketing team in Australia. Oh, what's different, what's the same? Lion New Zealand and Lion Australia, probably more same than different. But what I've had to do is really understand the Australian market and the nuances that exist here, and just the differences between the two business models. So that's probably been the biggest learning curve for me. Less about the category, less about the business that we operate, more about Australia and what makes the consumers tick.
Yeah, and things like, I understand in NZ you can walk into Woolies and grab beer, right?
That's a game changer.
I know! How is that different from a selling perspective?
Oh, look, when we think about retail in New Zealand, you're right, you can walk into a Woolies, you can buy beer and wine, not RTDs and spirits. And it is different because we've got different channels here, we've got different customers, we've got different states. There's definitely some state nuances that don't exist in New Zealand that I'm getting a little bit of a handle on. But yeah, a little bit of a different operating environment for how we're marketing as well.
And your defining moment, can you tell me something that was a real standout?
Oh look, it's probably less about one defining moment for me. It's more about what has shaped me over my career and I guess what I believe in. And I think from a marketing perspective, when you're working with brands that have been around a long time, I really believe that we are caretakers of those brands, and our role is pretty simple. It's just to leave them in a better place than when we started and touch them lightly or leave our fingerprints on the brands.
Love that.
Yeah, and from a leadership perspective, what I really think is important is making sure that you create a sense of belonging with our team, that people in our team understand that they feel valued, and that they know that we have a future together. And I think the combination of those two things makes for a pretty good formula for success.
Yep, very cool. Now, there's been some big changes in Lion over the last year or so, probably part of the reason why you're here as well. So we know Anuba quite well over at the AANA, and I understand that she's now moved into a Chief Growth Officer, so big congrats to her and yourself for the change of role. What I'd love to understand is, with now Lion having a growth team, how does the marketing team interact with that growth department?
So you're right, we've had recent change. We've introduced our growth team, which Anuba leads, and obviously we still have the Australian marketing team as well. The growth team and the marketing team work hand in hand because for both of us, the role is to serve our consumers. And what the growth team are doing is bringing in new capabilities that need to exist in our business, and then the Australian and the New Zealand and the US marketing teams are there to bring those capabilities into the business unit and then extract growth from them. So it really is hand in glove between marketing team and growth.
So I'd love to understand a little bit more about the beverage consumer now. Has the beverage consumer changed a lot since COVID or post-pandemic?
Yeah, it's a great question, and we've been grappling with that a lot. So I think as I reflected on what the consumer of today, look, there's a lot of things that are the same that have just simply accelerated. So when you think about well-being, that's not new, right? That's a macro trend that exists across every category. What we have typically done is it's showing up in alcohol and things like low sugar or low carb. It's shifting a little bit, it's shifting into mental well-being. What role can we play? People are drinking more at home. And post COVID, we had a long time where people were making their own cocktails at home and or having beers at home because that was necessary. And a little bit of that is still happening. Younger generations are having sociability at home before they go out, and that's a little bit of a shift for us. So I think we've got a whole lot that are the same but are accelerating, and then we've got a few that have been new and introduced and that we are trying to get on top of as well.
Mm-hmm. Rachel, I'd love to hear about how maybe one or two of your specific brands connect with their consumers and maybe some of the different marketing tactics that you're using within that family.
Yeah. When we think about beer overall, consumption per capita of beer is going down slowly, right? So, and you can see that in the shape of the category. We've just talked about ready to drinks or premixes, and they are growing as a part of the category. So, I think from when you translate that to a brand, brands live on, and the products come and go, right? So when we talk about brands that are working or not working, I mean the way that we approach that is, one, the brands have to be relevant, right? And I'm talking about the way that we show up, the creative we put in market, but equally tastes change as well. So, the beer that was suitable 50 years ago just simply isn't today. So the brands that hold on to that and don't change their products in response to where the consumer is at, or don't show up to consumers in the way that is meaningful to them. Think about the stereotypes that exist in beer, for example. We can't do that. That is not where our consumer is at. So I think the brands that don't do that well are the ones that you probably see under a little bit of pressure. The ones that are doing it well are the ones that hold on to their DNA as a brand, but meet consumers where they are as well. And I think that's pretty important. That's what we're starting to see with our brands. I think it's also about the occasions that beer delivers to, right? So you as a consumer, me as a consumer, will have occasions where we want to have slightly more well-being, or actually I want to have wine with my meal. That's not particularly health conscious, but it's just a different occasion, right? So I think as consumers we are more aware of well-being. I think and the brands need to deliver to that. It's the single biggest thing that is growing the category. When you look at low sugar and RTDs or low carbs in beer, so super important. But I don't think that needs to shape the DNA of every beer brand. So I think Hahn has probably had the sweet spot for us. We have a brand that is showing up in a culturally relevant way. Last week, we put together, half court, half pub. So, we created in situ a basketball court that was, half court, and then it neatly transitioned into a pub. And, what we're trying to do is, make sure that Hahn is showing up in after sport, occasions and sociability. We had Luke Longley there, who's obviously, famous for basketball. And that was something that is relevant to consumers. And what makes that work is that Hahn also delivers to wellbeing as a functional benefit for the product as well, because it's low carb. So I think that's an example of where we're showing up to consumers in the right way. It is relevant for Australians, and we've got the product to back it up.
Are you seeing that across the beer category?
I think the brands that are winning across the beer category are putting that formula together. So showing up where consumers are. A lot of people talk about, traditional advertising is dead. We shouldn't do TVCs. I mean, there is still a role for mass reach advertising, but it needs to be supplemented with the way that consumers are interacting with media. So whether that's through digital or whether we're going to activations that we can amplify. And then also the brands that are doing really well is when they couple that with a product that meets consumers' needs of today.
Mm-hmm. What does Lion do differently in the beverage category, and what maybe new and exciting things can you talk to?
Look, what we are doing differently, probably more as a business, is we have belief in our brands, and we've got an amazing portfolio that has been around a very, very long time, and we're adding to that to make sure that we have brands that meet consumers' needs today. So that is one thing. We're just being relentless about getting back into, you know, the number one position, you know, across the board. And what that means is that we really just have to go next level. So, you know, for us, we have an absolutely healthy respect for the category and our competitors. We are trying very hard to manage the balance between being consistent in our approach, being patient, and of course it's not always plain sailing, but we, you know, being patient, but also having a really healthy dose of challenger mindset. And I think that's showing up. You know, we're starting to get some really good results across the board.
Okay, great. Is there a ranking of beverage brands, or is it just certain categories have different sort of preferred?
I think it depends. You know, as a you know, from a consumer perspective, I mean, obviously, you know, how our brands show up from our marketing metrics or our sales metrics helps determine our position in market. We obviously work with a lot of suppliers, and so we are a supplier rather. We work with a lot of customers as well. I mean, broadly speaking, there's some big players in the market, but it's not always the big players that are, you know, the ones that have potentially the most impact on us. There is a lot of small players in the market because it's so fragmented. So, you know, we have to keep an eye on both, you know, the big players and the smaller players that are coming in.
Very cool. All right. So I'm going to move into some rapid fire questions.
Go.
That's okay.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm actually going to start with one that I didn't tell you that I was going to give you. I'm sorry. Tomorrow's International Women's Day, and we're meeting here just before. We're going to publish this next week.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to hear about a woman that inspires you, or that a female leader that's inspired you in your career.
Oh, look, I have a few, and I think I'm going to talk about a really recent experience. Just before I came to see you, Lion was hosting International Women's Day event, and there are four women on the panel, and two, I mean, they're all amazing women. Two women are in my team, and they shared their journey around a woman's health. And, you know, I just genuinely felt, you know, inspired. I was so incredibly proud of these women that got up there and shared their journey with, you know, Lion, our peers, our mates across the Tasman. And I think, you know, it's moments like that that really matter. And I think it's so important as females in business and female leaders that we are not only participating but creating an environment that allows that. So that's less about one single person. That is just more around what role we play to make sure that those conversations can happen. You know, and that was minutes ago. Mm-hmm. You know, and I just feel, you know, so proud to be just part of it, just part of that. So there's women, like, they're just sharing these vulnerable stories, and, you know, they were being brave.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, you know, there's lots of answers to that question, but, you know, when you feel that, and, you know, and I'm get goosebumps even talking about it, like, I'm like, that's what
Powerful.
matters. Yeah. What matters.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you please tell me the best career advice that you've ever received?
Well, I have two. So one is burn the lifeboats. Now, that feels uncomfortable, right? So I think when we are feeling a bit of overwhelm, or, you know, we've got a couple of decisions that we need to make, you know, oftentimes it's super helpful to take one decision off the table, or one route off the table. And I think that has a dual purpose. One, it helps us move forward. And the second is, I genuinely believe when we take an option off the table, it makes the option that we go with much better, because we focus our energy and our thinking and our resource behind that route, rather than deciding which one to do. So burn the lifeboats.
Hard to get that visual out of your mind.
I know, right? It's confronting. So, and look, the second is around horizons. And again, it's all about you know, how we show up to be our best self at work. And, you know, sometimes if you're anything like me, you'll find yourself planning for 5 years in advance, whether that's deciding, you know, schools that the kids go to, or what flavour we're going to do, and an innovation. And I think sometimes it's just super important to, you know, bring your horizon forward. And whilst we all want to think about the long term, you know, sometimes it's super helpful to go, okay, what is the next thing that I need to do? So you bring your horizon forward and you focus on what you can control in that period.
Finally, any parting words of wisdom for marketers that are listening in today?
Look, I think, you know, for marketers, just be brave. You know, look, we operate in a world where there's a lot of facts. There's also a little bit of grey. You know, we operate with consumers, and we're trying to change behaviour. You know, I find a really good balance. Like, find the edge for the brands. You know, and you know, there's a lovely analogy around, you know, professional skiers, and you know how you see, you know, a lot of photography about skiers that are right on the edge.
Incredible. Yes.
And I think that is similar to what we need to do, right? They're on the edge, but they don't fall. And you know, I think there is, you know, you have to fail sometimes. And you know, if you want to find the edge for the brand, then you're going to have to fail sometimes. So my overriding advice is, you know, make sure you find the edge, respect the DNA of the brand, and be unapologetic about the brand that you're working with, and the category or whatever you're working in. I think that's super important. And stay the course.
Love that. I'm going to ask one final question and sneak it in.
Yeah.
What thing are you and your daughters dying to do in Sydney since you've moved that you haven't done yet? Or maybe Australia.
Oh, yeah, Australia, right? So we, as probably the most height adverse family there is, are going to do the Harbour Bridge climb. Or even thinking about that makes me feel slightly anxious, but my girls are keen, so we're going to do that. We are also planning to go to Uluru. We really want to do that, and then up to Great Barrier, and spend some time up in Queensland. And then over Easter, we go down to the southern coast to Anna Bay, so just to spend some time there. So it's such an incredible country. We are spending a lot of time trying to get around and see everything.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, all the best with all that beautiful travel, and thank you again for your time.
My pleasure.